Hello and welcome back to the channel. Held Dominance, Anthony here. Please remember to like and subscribe, and also click that notification bell if you're enjoying what you're seeing and want to see more. Coming up, no radio voice, a new Rugby League World Cup 2021 statement and what's going on behind the scenes. Ken Davy about the state of Rugby League at this time. Statements from Shane Richardson, the GM of the Rabbitohs. And Davy responds to comments Jermaine McGilvray put through the press. And also another teaser at the end of the video for you guys to answer. So we begin tonight with the Rugby League World Cup, as we are, at the time of this recording, 113 days away from the event kicking off. And there has been some rumblings from down under in regards to player welfare and contractual agreements with the NRL players. So, Mick Gledhill, the Daily Caller, who is also a commentator for Radio Yorkshire and also well versed in the games, as well as his full 80 minutes YouTube channel, said in a statement on Twitter, after speaking to one NRL chief executive, the feeling down under is the 2021 World Cup won't be taking place. The Rugby League Players Association in Australia is exercising their right to mandate a 6-week off season, including the NRL season and the World Cup. The burning issue is players returning from the World Cup to quarantine and then having time off as per player contracts, which favours the NRL clubs. The feeling I've got from the NRL is that they don't want to come and play in the World Cup due to the mandated isolation period. So, as I've stated in a previous video, player welfare and quarantine rules are very, very strict, as you've seen with NRL's reaction to people breaking COVID curfew and mandates that they set out. So they would have to get some sort of dispensation, I hope, from the government so that they can be allowed to play in the World Cup, the Australian government that is, or COVID rules in the UK, including bubbles and things like that, and also T rates and transmission rates and things like that, are well looked after and monitored throughout the entire tournament, as they'll be coming into contact from players from all over the world, especially with the women's game. Players from Brazil will be coming through, the players from Canada. So there's multiple continents involved in this tournament, so they would have some sort of stringent action needed to put into place. This, though, was followed up by a statement put out by the the Rugby League World Cup 2021 team, stating, "Our primary focus remains to deliver the Rugby League World Cup this year as planned, and constructive progress has been made this week. We are realistic about the complex challenges we are facing in these unprecedented times, including international travel arrangements and quarantine of athletes and staff from the Southern Hemisphere. In the interest of delivering clarity and certainty to everyone involved in staging the tournament, a final decision will be made as soon as possible. However, we have made it clear that our decision making will not be dictated by deadlines if further consideration is required." So while that statement is encouraging that the talks are ongoing to getting the World Cup up and running, that last statement is kind of blunt, to be fair. The last part, deadlines, have Australian Rugby League, the NRL, the Players Association, whoever that in the Southern Hemisphere, put on a deadline or working towards a deadline if if it's not met, that they are, I'll get my words out, that they are not going to be involved in the World Cup. All the time will tell in that one. But it seems like the Rugby League World Cup is going to go ahead if these players are not going to be involved. I hope it goes ahead because, well, I'll be on the pitch for at least one game. Well, I aim to be. You'll see what I mean in the video that I'll put out around about that time. But in the meantime, I'm hoping it goes ahead and common sense prevails, but that all depends on COVID being treated well and the vaccines and more information, and also the policies of the Australian government and the regional ones, New South Wales, Queensland, Victoria, just to name 3, come into effect that it's not so stringent as before. We'll see. We'll get more and more information. As I said, the Rugby World Cup team are indeed looking for more, well, to get the decision completed as soon as possible. We'll just have to wait and see. Well, and this week there was a press interview given out by, well, it was a meet the press sort of situation, as Super League Interim Chairman Ken Davy went on record talking about possible alignments between the Super League, realignments that is, between Super League and the RFL, which is all good news when it comes to rugby league in general. As reported in Yorkshire Live, Ken Davies mentioned on the realignment discussions, the discussions and the negotiations, if you will, with the RFL will probably be starting a week today, certainly early July. How long are these talks going to last? It's impossible to say with absolute certainty. However, I am working towards a late August expectation that we will get to a conclusion, but I wouldn't want to put an absolute time limit on, because that is something we need to commit to. We shouldn't be put ourselves on the clock having to commit to a set date. Nonetheless, I hope we can advance the discussions fairly rapidly. I know Simon Johnson, the RFL chair, and Ralph Rimmer, RFL CEO, are also keen discussions to progress. The questions then turned into the international side, as there was the international that weekend. It was coming off the back of that. So he was asked whether the timing of the meetings was to discuss the internationals and what went on during the international period and why games were played with depleted sides while the internationals were going on, and with the Super League clubs also having full knowledge of that. For some clarity, the international had no impact on the planning for these negotiations, none whatsoever. The timing has been in my plans for quite some time. It's a reality. The Super League Fixtures Working Group recommended a blank weekend for Super League for the international weekend. However, the circumstances were such that the Super League board decided that there ought to be fixtures. My preference would have been for there not to be, but it was the board's decision. That would be an obvious that there would be, and obviously I support that. The clubs are going through enormous financial difficulties this year, and we're not unique in that. We still have to play games with limited fans, undoubtedly. That has made it more difficult for the clubs in every respect. To miss out on Super League fixtures would have made it even worse for the clubs. You make clubs in plural. On the back of that, and the internationals and the weekend of fixtures, He was asked about one of his, as he was chairman of Huddersfield Giants for a time, before taking up this role. He was chairman of them for quite a number of years. He was asked questions after one of his former players, as I said, made a comment in the press, and that player was Jermaine McGilvray, who had mentioned in the press and was very critical about the handling of the international weekend. Super League and the RFL need to come together, bang some heads together and sort this out. It seems like they're fighting against each other, and it shouldn't be like that. It should be all for one to grow the game. There's a feeling of we're going to make Super League big and we're going to make the RFL big. No. It should be let's get big together. It might take years, but the game hasn't grown at all. It's gone a bit backwards. It's such a great sport. My kids play it and I watch local amateur rugby league all the time. Everyone loves it, but it's just not progressing. It needs to get these two organisations to come together and sort a proper international schedule out. As long as we keep fighting against each other, it isn't going to happen. It isn't going to grow. I must say that expansionists in the game have been saying things like that for some time, and there are a lot of people in the game that know this. Jermaine McGilvray is one of the latest people to come out and say it. After, with Toronto Wolfpack, I know I'm bringing them up, and it is a total different situation because he's mostly talking about international rugby league. He mentioned about it needs to expand. They're all right. It's a way of, it's their living at the end of the day, and if they can't, if Super League are not maximising the potential that it has, then it's an uphill battle. But don't get me wrong, Ken Davy actually responded to these comments on the interview as well, because he said in a statement in the presser, Jerry is of course a Huddersfield player, and far be it to me to disagree with a Huddersfield player calling on his chairman days with the club, which weren't too far back. But the reality is he's reflecting a message which has been coming out loud and clear from within Super League and other parts of the game. One of the reasons I'm in this job is because there is a determination to put things right. We have got a fantastic game and tremendously loyal supporters. We enjoy pretty good media exposure, but the reality is we're not as big a game as we should be, or as we deserve to be. I think that's something we have all got to see improve. I think many people would agree with Jerry. I'm not disagreeing with Jerry. The game has not moved forwards as it should have. If anything, in the last few years it's fallen back somewhat, and I would say unjustifiably so. Which is why the realignment with the RFL, the Rugby World Cup, and all those things is so important. We just can't sit on our hands. The game and the supporters and the people who back Super League clubs are putting in their heart and soul into it. COVID-19 has come along and made things really challenging for everyone. I do have to say that in that last part, I do feel it's a little bit of a cop-out. It's focusing on COVID-19. That's only been happening 18 months. Yes, financially they can't put plans into play yet due to financial constraints that they have to suffer through, unfortunately. But as people have been saying for years, it's not done anything for years. And with that, there is one little part that had to be covered, and it's going to refer me back to the Toronto Wolfpack as one of the things that got them out of Rugby League in this country is through central funding, and he was asked about that when asked about promotion and relegation. and if teams come up with an equal share of central distribution monies, i.e. the TV deals. He said, I have no information on that whatsoever. I've not heard a suggestion that the arrangements will be changed, but we're in uncertain times with COVID-19 and everything that surrounds it. It would be foolish of me to give an absolute guarantee, but certainly that is everybody's understanding at the present time. So that's a little bit of a change that came in through that since the Toronto Wolfpack situation came into play, as I know they were asked to fund it themselves to begin with, and didn't take the central money as part of the deal to fund it themselves. But they came back and said, to continue, we would like to get some central funding, and I'm sure that would have been able to help them. But I'm just speculating here. On a turn on that, there was comments from Shane Richardson, the current head of rugby at the South Sydney Rabbitohs. The former Hull chief executive, Shane Richardson, called for an overhaul of the British game with establishment of an independent commission at the heart of it. Richardson, who served on the board of the Super League during his time with Hull and Gateshead Thunder, the club he helped found in 1999, says the game in England is so badly fractured and dogged by infighting that it is in danger of going part-time. Arguing major changes must come before the next television deal expires in just over 2 years' time. Richardson, a widely respected administrator in his over 3 decades at club level in Australia with Cronulla, Penrith, South Sydney, submitted a paper that with his proposals to the NRL and circulated copies to 2 or 3 Super League clubs. On that paper, he said, "The paper I submitted to the NRL about a month ago is about the value of the English game and how it needed to be tied into what we need to do with international calendars, so that we actually have a viable worldwide rugby league to be able to sell it to the world of sport. In my opinion, it's fragmented, it's all over the place, nothing ever ties together, and nobody really takes an interest in the totality of the game." When he was also asked about the international weekend and how that came about and how it came across to him, he said that it looked like a farce, and with the setup of an independent commission, everybody would have to go. And also, where the clubs did not control the day-to-day running of the game and where decisions could be made about the betterment of the game. Richardson didn't hold back, as his take on the international game was, when seeing that the international game was not the only game played by the Super League RFL over the weekend, he said, "I thought the game would grow, but it's gone backwards and the reason for that is that it's the same model." He said, "In 21 years, there have been no changes. What business in the world goes on without changes? It makes me sick to my guts to think that the game is going to go backwards at this rate." Let's be honest, this game on Friday is one of the greatest farces in the world of international sport, and you can see teams like Huddersfield naming 13 players for a match. I reckon you've got 2 years to fix it. If you don't fix it in 2 years, I'm not sure where your television deal is going to be. Continuing on that vein, he said, "You're going to be become a semi-amateur game if you don't, in the next 2 years, have a plan in place so that you can sell it to investors. There are people who would invest in the clubs if they were more viable. Why would you buy us into Super League at the moment the way it is?" People need to put their egos aside and say, it's alright saying I love the game, but you're loving it to death. One of the plans that Richardson came up with was reducing the amount of teams in Super League, involving instead teams from Newcastle, Wales, and more than likely 2 foreign teams, France being specific. But on reflection, on this point, Ken Davy said, I would think that was very unlikely. When asked about these points that Shane Richardson put across, Mr. Davy responded, I have seen that, and indeed there is no shortage of advice that has been given to me. It would be completely wrong to try and second guess what form of the realignment would take, but the important thing is that the whole game goes forward together. Look at this weekend when it was clearly demonstrated. There was extensive coverage of the pre-game, which demonstrates the interest there is in the England team. I'm sure that as we move forward, we'll be able to build on that as a game and as a Super League. So there was one point that at nearly the end of the interview that was covered by Mr. Davy when it came to what happens after, or when and if the realignment is a success. And he was asked, could Mr. Davy be replaced following that realignment with the RFL? He said, I wouldn't want to second guess the outcome of the negotiations at this stage. However, that has to be a realistic possibility. So that's realignment being touted again by Super League to go back with the RFL, as things do have to change, and I'm glad that they're identifying that. I have some reservations about Ralph Rimmer and his takes on academies, but if he's willing to sit down to look at that changes to get the two entities back on the same page, it can only be good for British rugby. European rugby, shall we say that? I want this to work. I want Rugby League to work. And you need Shane Richardson's warnings ringing in their ears, because it's a true possible fact. He's well versed in the sport. Where's the business plan? Doesn't seem to be any. The Super League and the RFL need to wrestle control of voting and decisions on the game away from the clubs. Set up this independent commission. I know they have it in Australia, but we need to do it our own way, but still have an independent commission to say, yeah, we agree with that, yeah, no, because this will be detrimental to this. I think that the commission is a good idea. I just am making it plain like here, but everyone has to agree. It may mean that a couple of Super League clubs might be relegated in the switch for others. I wouldn't be surprised if another club from the Midlands comes to the fore, so that the M62 corridor is reached. I like the idea of Wales, but if it's not Wales, if someone in Midlands to go into the Super League, shows that the game's expanding wider. So yeah, I'm glad that Ken Davy went out and met the board, met all the press even, and told her the plans with the realignment. Well, not too much of the realignment, just that it's on the agenda, and to look into ways that it could work. And it needs to work. It's Rugby League, it's sport that we all love, that's why you're watching these videos. We'll wait and see to see what comes out of this. The negotiations are supposed to start latter end of this week into next week. they could go on for a while, but I do hope they are all successful. So that's it for another video, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for watching. Please remember to like, subscribe and share this video worldwide. As you know, I mentioned a quiz and the question is appearing right there right now. But remember, it's just for fun. In the meantime, thank you again for watching. All the best, and I'll see you in the next video.